Hey everybody, LiveLock here, and for this video, I'm going to try to help people that are pretty conflicted about what they should be maining next patch, if it's going to be tank. I became a Blood Decay somewhat recently. I was a Brew, and then I was a Prot Warrior, but rather than go through like all the numbers and stats and builds and stuff that are going to exist in 9.2, I kind of want to focus on just the experience of actually playing a Blood Death Knight. So what this video is going to be is just like highlights of like nice pulls with unique DK utility. It's just so you can get like a sense of what it feels like to actually play a Blood Death Knight relative to the other tanks. Because Blood DKs really do have a lot of pretty unique utility, and it's really, really fun to just play the Blood DK. So if you're like getting a little burnt out on having like Pugs not kick or not CC or not watch for Sanguine, then like you might enjoy actually a season as Blood DK where you're in full control of your destiny. And the tier set is looking like really good for Blood DK as far as Mythic Plus. You know, it's probably not as much damage as like other tanks, but that's like, you know, Blood DK's big drawback. It has to have some drawback because everything else is so good. The first unique thing that I'm going to talk about with DK that no other tank has is mind control for Undead. So here's a pull where I'm pulling the first sorcerer in Necrotic Wake, and usually on Fort Weeks you might have somebody that CCs the additional undead mages that die when the sorcerer dies. But as a Death Knight, you can actually just control undead them yourself, and then when the pull is over, if you cancel your mind control, then they just die. So this is it's somewhat novelty in and of itself, but there are a lot of weeks like Inspiring Week where a lot of the mobs actually happen to be undead, so you can pretty much work around at least all of like Necrotic Wake, probably a lot of Theater of Pain with just like your own mind control, so it's completely in your hands. And this example is sort of like the prototypical example of when you would use mind control. There's this ancient Captain Pack in Theater of Pain that gives a buff to all of his friends. He's also the one that gets inspired. You just MC him, take him along for the ride. You get the buff. Later on, you can kill him when it's not a big risk. It's like one less thing to coordinate, one thing that you're in control of. It feels really nice. It's unique, and it's actually pretty helpful in this expansion. Moving on to the ability that will be the source of most of the times where you think to yourself like, "Wow, that was cool." Gorefiend's Grasp. It it basically groups everybody up. But you can see in this pull right here, this is an HOA where nobody listened to my instructions that I needed to have time to get aggro. They started doing things. I can recover from it instantly, like that, by using Gorefiend's Grasp. You know, they all get stacked up, and you shouldn't underestimate how important it is just to have everything stacked for your DPS. Like if you're running with the Demonology Warlock, for example, which next patch you may see a lot more of them, they summon imps and they send all of their imps in an implosion to kill things, but the range is a little bit tight. Just having everything stacked up like that in a large pull, like a warlock could go from something like 20k DPS to 30k DPS in like one button press if that was the case. So it's just like an amazing ability for like recovery and enabling your DPS to actually do damage. And there are other uses for it as well. This is Sanguine Depths after that first boss. Usually what people do is they'll come in here and they'll just aggro the entire room of casters. They're really dangerous casters though, so having more full stops on them is huge. So here I'm a High Mountain Tauren. I can get my first High Mountain stop off, then I Gorefiends them as just like one more additional AoE stop. Now, like most tanks actually have something like that as an extra AoE stop, but just the fact that it's this one thing that we can do so many things for, to me that's like makes it really unique. Now, of course, people eventually die anyway, but at least I can AMZ them, which other tanks couldn't do, to make them die more slowly. So, yeah, it's just a really flexible, unique utility that only DKs have. And of course, one of the best uses for Gorefiend is managing Sanguine and Sanguine Week. There are a lot of cases, like here in HOA, where a mob will plant in place, and if something else dies on top of it, it'll just end up healing itself. But you can target yourself and yoink everything to you. I actually found out recently, shout out to Grixin for telling me this, another YouTuber, that you can target friendly people with Gorefiend's Grasp. It for whatever reason never occurred to me, but since like learning about that, I just it opens up worlds of possibilities. You just yoink everything to yourself. If there's like a sanguine emergency, if there's like someone on your team that you don't like, then you yank everybody to them. You know, they're just, you know, like I'm playing Shadow Priest right now, so I really like having Leap of Faith to abuse my teammates with. And Gorefiend's Grasp actually is like another way to abuse your teammates with. I mean, you want to use it for good, but it's good to know that you can also use it for evil. And just another example for Sanguine Week, just because like I don't know, whenever I use Gorefiend's Grasp on Sanguine Week to like, you know, clutch some like Sanguine healing, it just feels, you know, like the coolest thing in the world. Like here's a caster pack right after a shard of Hell Chaos Boss. Like they just died, bam. I target myself, Gorefiends them, yank the other one out, and there's 0 Sanguine healing for that pull. That's just one of those moments you can, you know, chef's kiss. You know, you can you can have real pride in your work. But a word of caution, you're just for completeness, a example of me Gorefiending too early, and it has the exact opposite effect, which is planting everybody in Sanguine permanently. So with great power comes responsibility, but I'd rather have the option for the power. Moving on to another awesome utility. It's been in the videos a lot so far, but Death and Decay. The 90% slow on Death and Decay is just like, it feels so good to be able to control mobs like this. Like here's a necrotic example. Like I get necrotic, I just drop a D&D and I back off. You know, it's as simple as that. I can also yoink this guy out of Ursols to interrupt him, but like just being able to at any point in time know that you can just like backpedal away from all of the mobs safely is something you don't really get with other tanks, especially with like Warrior, who I was doing before this. Like it was so frustrating to me to not have something like a tool like this to get enemies off your back. Some of the most iconic Blood Decay utility is AMZ. Here's an Echelon pull. As these adds, Echelon summons dies, they do big AoE magic damage. So there are like lots of little nuggets of places like this all over, you know, every dungeon where just like having like a big heal for the group, or sorry, a big magic DR for the group pays off a ton. And right there, Icebound Fortitude is a stun break, which does come in handy right there, as you see. Like Echelon will stun you, and you can actually just Icebound Fortitude out of his stun. So AMZ just comes in handy. I think there's not a single dungeon where AMZ can't be used for something. And it isn't trivial either. It's like tens of thousands of damage prevented with like an AMZ for the entire team, especially as like a Blood Decay. So it's nothing to scoff at. Here's an example from Season 2. Baruth, who is going away in a few days, has this AoE fear that he does, or right after the AoE fear. Yeah, I guess it is the AoE fear. Like this all does magic damage, and it does hardly any damage when you throw down an AMZ. Like your healer will love you, so they can continue to just, you know, damage instead of heal, like they should be doing. That obviously won't be in the next season, but I'm sure something like that will be available in the next season too. And of course, we will always have bursting until the end of time. So here's just like a normal pull in a Spires on bursting week. Usually, as everything dies, you'll just stack up bursting more and more. So throwing down an AMZ on any old arbitrary pull will make, you know, the pulls where you don't have any like defensives or mitigation for bursting. Your healers will definitely appreciate this. It's no master spell, but it can make a lot of things that would have been impossible possible. You don't have access to that. And just another pull, I think, from the same dungeon probably. These are the little jumpy guys just before the third boss inspires. They typically die right around the same time. Just throwing down AMZ. That one was even staggered, so AMZ is actually helping that much more. I should probably look up the actual mitigation done there, but it is definitely non-trivial. Coming up on one of my favorites, Anti-Magic Shield. We have Zone. We also have Anti-Magic Shield. It's just for us. The awesome thing about Anti-Magic Shield is that it prevents dot applications on you. So here I am about to soak all the orbs in the third boss of Spires, and the first like 5 or 6 orbs that I soak actually don't even apply the orb debuff to me. So I take no damage from those whatsoever. I mean, I probably could, honestly, just like heal myself through all of them. I'll be taking so much damage at that point that my death strikes will be massive, but just knowing that I can immune basically things like that. And if I were to mistakenly trigger a stomp, like if you go into this boss's floor area, he'll stomp you. So if you needed to, you could AMS that away too. And there are other bosses that have effects that you can AMS away that other tanks will basically just have to deal with. Um, for example, the final boss in Halls, Lord Chamberlain, has this like stigma of pride that he puts on you, and AMS literally just like makes it not happen. It's just like a, one less mechanic you do anything about. I don't think any other tank can really do anything about that. I think Pally can probably like bubble taunt it off of him if you want to, but yeah, just it's like one flick, it's gone. No other tank can really do that. Echelon actually also has a mechanic that you can do that too. You end up wanting to learn more about bosses when you like using AMS because you want to figure out where you can actually use this. And it turns out that the Curse of Stone that Echelon attaches to you, after he stomps on you, the thing that he does to you is magic damage and a magic debuff. So if you have to just take his stomp for whatever reason, then just AMS, and it's like totally fine. There's like literally nothing to you as a DK. And utility-wise, an honorable mention would be Death's Advance. Death's Advance is also like an incredibly unique ability. It often like breaks raid encounters. Like here, this stomp on the first boss of Plaguefall knocks everybody away. But if you Death's Advance, then you just stand there and take no knockback at all. And there are lots of like weird little things you figure out that you can use this for. Like in Storming Week, for example, one thing you can do is just put up Death's Advance and just run through a bunch of tornadoes for your DPS. Most of the time DPS fail at that anyway, so they'll just take a hit on their damage. You might as well be the one that actually takes the damage and suffers no knockback for doing it. And I thought it would probably be useful just to go over some like quick talent stuff, some like Covenant stuff. I mean obviously there's a lot of videos out there where you can get like tier set information. I think the things that I would want people to know are you do actually have some choice when it comes to the talents of a Death Knight, which I felt when I was playing Brew and Warrior, that the talents were just like set and forget, and you really couldn't customize anything to your liking. One of the things I like so much about playing Shadow Priest right now, which is what I'm probably going to be maining for next tier, which I made a video about, you can see, is you can customize like your damage profile to the scenario. You're not just like stuck with like one loadout where you can't ever make any changes to your performance, like a Windwalker Monk, for example. But with the DK, you actually have some choices. So most of the time, this is what I end up playing. I really like playing Venthyr. I know that Venthyr probably won't be the Bis Covenant once we actually have our double Lego and our tier set, but I don't know, it's fine. Like Death Knight actually can play all Covenants pretty well. So your choices are mostly like personal preference at this point. And I'm talking to people that are obviously not pushing like world first keys because they wouldn't be watching the video in the first place. But yeah, in terms of the choices, like I love playing Bone Storm. It's natural to play Bone Storm when you're doing Storming Mist because just like AoE situations, Storming Mist gives you so much runic power that you can't actually spend it fast enough in an efficient way. So just like turning it into damage in any way possible is pretty handy. One thing that I've gotten into recently is on Tyrannical Weeks, actually running Rune of Sanguination. So one of the things that Death Knights can do is save money on their main hand weapon enchants by going to Death Knight Land and picking from one of these enchants. And usually everyone will be running Fallen Crusader, which gives you like a bunch of strength, a lot of strength actually, and some healing. But when we need priority damage, if you go with Rune of Sanguination here, it doubles your Death Strike damage when the enemy is at 0% health. So it adds like for every percent of health that they're missing, you get a percent buff onto Blood Strike up to like twice when they're effectively dead. And it gives you a giant heal if you go below 50%, which you do pretty often as Death Knight. So it probably is lower overall damage, but you can take Storming Mists and turn it into like a funnel machine, or like just one thing that has to die really fast, and then just unload all of your extra runic power into that one thing. So in this poll, what was that? Not a ton of damage because we don't do a lot of damage, but if they were lower health, which these dummies are never going to be lower health, then you'd see a bigger difference. Typically, Death Strike will be the top damaging ability at the end of your runs if you go with Sanguination. Now, this row, I typically don't go Bloodworms. I've played around with it for a little bit. I think it technically is more damage, but Voracious makes like a pretty big difference in your personal healing, so I just stay with that. I know people prefer to do Red Thirst, but Bone Storm for me for those reasons. And I've never taken Purgatory because I'm not going to die, right? What do I need Purgatory for? I'm just going to be good. Grip of the Dead, you never do anything but Grip of the Dead. Like, it's just so good to have this. You never really change Necropolis. Some people prefer to do Relish in Blood. Blood Tap takes more like active like engagement to maximize. Hemostasis, I really haven't ever not taken this except for Mage Tower, where I took Consumption, I'm pretty sure. And Heartbreaker is typically something to take, except for Mage Tower, where I used Blood Drinker. But here's the choices where you have, the rows where you have some options. I just think like picking your build around Bone Storm, Red Thirst is pretty cool. And you have multiple viable trees, as Venthyr, at least. Draven adds a ton of mitigation of, I guess, effective health benefits, and some pretty good damage too. If you ever die, you get this giant health-based bomb that you leave behind. So I've had multiple boss encounters where this was the deciding factor in the actual boss fight, funnily enough. But if you're going for more of a damage build, you can go with Nadia, and that's perfectly fine too. All of the Covenants actually have multiple trees like that are pretty viable. Like I prefer Emily when I'm going with a Necrolord. I don't pay Kyrian and Night Fae enough to really recommend anything in particular, but I know that there are multiple viable builds for them too. So you have a ton of options. You can fill pretty easily all of that good stuff. So yeah, I hope this video can serve as maybe some guidance or maybe a tiebreaker on some of the key choices that you were trying to make. Maybe there was like a really specific thing you hated about the tank you were playing, like it was a warrior and you have no CC, but you didn't really know, like, how does it feel from a Blood Knight's point of view? I know I've read things on the forum, but how's it actually look, when you're behind the wheel, so to speak? Hopefully it helps. Good luck, everybody. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.